Light was a weak, useless adventurer who was betrayed and almost unalived by his party members. However, after barely managing to survive, he discovers a cheat skill that allows him to summon overpowered maids who love him, so he builds an empire to get his revenge on everyone who betrayed him. This story starts on the day Light left his family in the village to fulfill his dream of becoming an adventurer powerful enough to give them all comfortable lives. Days later, he finally makes it to the City of Dreams and quickly sets out to find the Adventurers Guild. On the way there, he bumps into a beast man and gets shocked by his hostility. However, Light quickly forgets about it and eventually finds the guild, where a receptionist welcomes him and asks for his skill, so she can give him the proper rank. After saying that he has something called the unlimited gacha, she gets confused, so he activates the skill and basically summons a card that transforms into a broken fork. Naturally, she gets even more confused, but he assures her that his skill is not totally worthless before proceeding to summon rotten food. To avoid more dumpster trash getting stacked on her desk, she decides to register him as an F-rank adventurer and explains that he can only do some manual labor as work until he gets strong enough to handle real quests. He then tries to read some of the job offers on a board, but quickly realizes that the languages are much too complex for his pea-sized brain. Thankfully, the receptionist explains where he can get a day's job, so he heads out and spends the rest of the day doing any hard labor he can get. However, on his way to find an inn that night, he bumps into a bunch of beastmen who then cuss him out for walking so close to them. Light immediately apologizes and tries to leave, but they stop him and demand payment to get their clothes cleaned up. The next moment, the leader grabs all the money he has left, and when he tries to get it back, they kick him back into the mud and tell him not to bother following them. After they leave, Light tries to pull himself together as more beastmen walk past and curse at him. All of a sudden, a lady reaches out to him, and after taking her hand with his muddy fingers, he sees that she is an elf and quickly moves back in fear. Upon seeing this, Sasha tells him not to worry and calmly gets down in the mud to hug him. Like that isn't enough, a beastman named Garu, who came with her, explains that their party aims to end discrimination among all 9 races. After Sasha helps him up, they all introduce themselves and assure him that they are only looking for a human to make their party complete, so they can finally achieve world peace by uniting all the races. Upon hearing this, Light's hope in the world gets restored, and he agrees to join their party. Days later, they take him into the abyss to slay powerful serpents, but his blatant lack of skill almost causes him to get eaten up. Luckily, Drago and Sasha manage to protect him, and as she walks over to check on him, the rest of the gang starts teasing her about her addiction to his cute face. As Sasha quickly states that she just doesn't want their party to lose another member, Light gets upset, but Drago tells him not to worry about getting stronger just yet because they all enjoy the tea he makes. Several minutes later, they get to a crossroads deep within the abyss, and Drago suddenly says it's the perfect spot for the final step of their plan, so Light decides to make them all another round of tea. However, the moment he sets out all the cups, Drago banishes him from the party. Naturally, he gets shocked by this and asks if it's some sort of joke, but Garu tells him to stop acting stupid and says they could never accept a worthless weakling like him as part of their party. All of a sudden, they all take turns explaining how traumatizing it felt to watch over a weak peasant. But the real shock sets in when Sasha says she wanted to throw up when she first held his dirty hands. Light then asks why they all acted nice if they always thought he was useless. So Garu explains that their seniors became intrigued by his ability and thought he was a powerful hero called the Maestro, which is why they were sent to keep an eye on him. The whole talk of ending discrimination with their party was just a script they acted out to win his trust, so they could see if he was actually some overpowered hero. Upon hearing this, Light says he has never been able to use his skill for anything meaningful, and after they all agree that he is the literal meaning of the word useless, Drago tells Garu to finish him off before other adventurers show up. Despite hearing his words loud and clear, Light refuses to believe that they can actually be that heartless until Garu's claws slice into his face. He immediately tries to escape, but Sasha shoots an arrow into his thigh, causing him to crash into the dirt. While they continue talking about how useless he is, Garu proceeds to rearrange his insides with a series of brutal kicks until they remind him that Light's death is meant to look like a sudden monster attack. After complaining for a bit, Goro decides to put an end to his suffering. But in a moment of desperation, Light activates a portal and ends up in a different part of the abyss. Despite knowing that he is still cooked the moment a monster finds him, he takes a moment to cry about the shocking betrayal and swears to unalive every single one of them with his bare hands. The next moment, he senses something powerful behind him and sees a colossal hydra preparing to feast on his bones. After realizing that he somehow teleported to the deepest part of the abyss, he still refuses to accept his fate and starts frantically pressing his gacha, hoping to escape again. Right then, it changes form and reveals a powerful Yu-Gi-Oh card that summons a plot-heavy chick named Mei.
Magic.
As she kneels in front of him, his PTSD skyrockets, but she calmly heals him and says she couldn't bear to see him in so much pain. After realizing that she actually healed all his injuries, Light jumps back and asks how, but she starts calling him master and pledges to dedicate her life to serving him. She then explains that she is an ultra-rare card summoned by his unlimited gacha and continues pledging eternal loyalty. But he refuses to believe it and says his gacha has always been useless. After offering to use her appraisal skill to read through his stats, Mei begs him to only call her by name since he is her master.
You naughty.
So he reluctantly accepts just to make sense of what she is saying. She then uses her skill to look through his stats and explains that his latent abilities were hidden under a conceal spell that would only be visible to someone on level 999, like her. She also explains that his gacha's ability to summon cards is actually affected by the level of mana surrounding him. And since mana is at its lowest on the surface, he could have never summoned someone like her without reaching the deepest level of the abyss. As then commends him on being brave enough to reach such depths all alone. He starts bawling his eyes out and explains how Goro almost turned him into a human kebab. After listening to his tragic story, Mei pulls him in for a hug and uses the power of her divine melons to cure his sadness. She then tells him not to worry about anything else and promises to bring all their heads to him on a platter as soon as he gives the order, but he hesitates and says it won't be necessary. This surprises Mei, but she commends his kindness before saying that Sasha and the rest of them deserve the worst death imaginable. Light then explains that he has no intention of showing mercy, but he wants to be the one who takes them all out. To achieve that, he needs to become much stronger because he still can't fight a squirrel at his current level. Upon hearing this, Mei promises to do anything in her power to make him the strongest. And after thanking her for everything, Light activates his gacha again to start maxing out his stats. 3 years later, Light's obsession with strength has led to him becoming an overpowered lord ruling an entire citadel deep in the abyss, filled with maids all obsessed with pleasing him. As they beg to kiss his boot, Mei offers to shut them up for good, but he tells her to let them be since they are only expressing their feelings for him. Several minutes later, they enter the city and, after greeting some of the locals, Light asks Mei about the rest of his most trusted maids. She then starts by telling how a hot car girl named Aoyuki has been working to tame more beasts deep in the dungeon, while an even hotter maid named Ellie continues her magic research to help their country grow. She also tells him about Mizuna, another maid who barely escaped midget status, but after this, they return to the castle and meet Jack, a freak of nature who casually addresses Light like his little brother. Mei immediately gets pissed and threatens to punish him, but Light tells her to relax because he has no problem with Jack's blatant lack of respect. After telling her to get some rest, he and Jack head into a training room to work on Light's martial arts. The next moment, Light lunges towards him and lands a devastating blow to the gut. But Jack only gets pushed back and says his insides would have turned to mush if his abs were not literally made of steel. While they continue trading punches, Mizuna excitedly continues her patrol in the castle, and eventually runs into 4 maids who then start praising her for being so committed to her job. As soon as the glazing starts getting to her head, they ask if she can patrol a very special area, but she gets confused, so they explain that she is the only one who can get in since everyone else got banned by Mei. Moments later, Mei opens the door to Light's room and sees Mizuna, who then asks why she is in his room. She quickly spins a story about always having to make sure his room is spotless so he can rest properly. But as she continues yapping, Mizuna slips in and immediately notices that the sheets just got roughed up. She then asks Mei why it looks like someone obviously bigger than Light was just rolling in it. After Mei claims it's just a new method of dressing his bed, Mizuna foolishly believes her and pulls out a note the other maids gave her. She then reads out their complaints against Mei's decision to keep Light's room all to herself and further explains that they basically want her to get fired and banned from his room so they can all get access to it and sniff his magnum trunks whenever they want. After thanking her for being a clueless snitch, Mei pays her, so Mizuna happily runs off to get a snack in the city. Afterwards, she finds Aoyuki and asks if she is already done with her mission. However, Aoyuki refuses to use the part of her brain responsible for speech and continues making cat noises like a deranged psycho, until she gets tired of Mizuna's questions and writes a response on paper. Minutes later, Mizuna sees that the throne room is empty, so she straddles the throne and imagines riding Light's magic wand until she breaks off a part of the throne and immediately runs away. By then, Light and Jack have just decided to end training for the day, so they head to the men's bath, where Jack explains that he still needs a little more training to be completely invincible. Meanwhile, Mei has already summoned all 4 maids who sent Mizuna, and after she demands an explanation, they all apologize and claim they were just trying to help with all the work she does. Mei immediately tells them to stop the cap and calls them cowards for not saying it to her face before rejecting their demand and punishing them with more cleaning work. Shortly after this, Ellie finds Mizuna window shopping in the city and decides to try having a conversation with the most stupid maid in the entire citadel. After greeting each other, Ellie immediately starts teasing for having the same brain structure as Patrick Star. But Mizuna refuses to take the disrespect and starts bragging about how useful she is to Light. Ellie then tells her about a private tea date she had with Light in his room. But Mizuna completely forgets about the room part and says she also wants to have tea with him, causing Ellie to realize that her brain cells might actually be reducing by the day. Back in the castle, the 4 shameless creeps obsessed with Light have just finished their punishment, so they sit at a table to discuss how vile and wicked Mei is. After also recalling that she was alone with Light for 3 whole months before he summoned Aoyuki, they start to fantasize about all the unholy things Light probably did with her, and decide to channel all their hate into a desperate prayer for the Grim Reaper to take Mei away for good. Right then, she walks in and asks if they were talking about her, but they immediately huddle together in fear and claim they were only talking about how amazing she was. After explaining that Light actually spent all 3 months reading books and practicing martial arts, Mei decides to make them clean the entire throne room as punishment for hating on her. Later that night, Mizuna finally returns to her room to rest and starts complaining about how she never got to see Light because he was so busy with other things. The next day, Light decides to head into the abyss and finds her already waiting with Aoyuki and Ellie. After they all run over to greet him, a hellhound shows up, and shivers suddenly run down his spine as he remembers what happened on that dreadful night 3 years ago. However, the girls quickly fire up their powers and decide to wipe out every hellhound from existence just for the crime of growling at Light. But he stops them and calmly walks over to pet the scared beast. He then tells them that it's finally time for the first stage of his revenge plan, so they set out for the surface world. Meanwhile, somewhere in a craft, the city of wolves, Garu walks around soaking in the praise of his brain-dead fans. After spotting a peasant rummaging through trash for food, he kicks him down and insults him before taking his boys into a bar for booze. As they continue glazing his every move and ask how he ascended to such a powerful level, he reminds them of the perception skill all beastfolk are born with and says he just learned to hone his until perfection so he would only choose the best and highest paying jobs. Upon hearing this, they ask if he used the skill during his mission with the Concord of Tribes 3 years ago. But one of them immediately stops the others from asking further questions and says that Garu can't talk about it because it's classified. After agreeing that he can't go into detail about what happened, Garu reminisces on what he did to Light and starts praising himself since it was his highest paid job. However, he also wonders why the Federation thought he could be the maestro. Just then, Mei walks into the bar to speak with him, and after a couple of days, his entire group escorts her to the deepest part of the abyss. When she first showed up at the bar, they were all surprised to see that a human had enough balls to casually walk in. But then she mentioned being a servant of Light and said she had been searching for him. This causes Garu to get intrigued since he never expected Light to have such a hot maid. He got even more surprised when she said Light was of noble descent. and after taking a moment to think, he decided to entertain a conversation. Mei then asked for help finding Light's remains because she had already heard about the fake story they had made up about his death in the abyss. When Garu reminded her of how dangerous it was, she offered to pay them in gold, and he immediately accepted to help her, claiming that he was only doing it because Light was a dear friend. Back in the abyss, he makes up his mind to take her melons for a spin as soon as they get deep enough, and after a couple more minutes of walking, they finally make it to the spot where Light teleported from. Goru then explains how he was attacked by monsters and got caught in a teleportation trap before they could do anything. Upon hearing this, Mei drops to her knees and acts like she just got her heart broken, so Garu takes the opportunity to give his boys the signal. However, after they block off the exits, Mei starts explaining what really happened back then in detail, so Goru jumps back and demands to know who she is because no random person should have such information. While his boys get surprised by his reaction, he continues asking Mei if she is some sort of spy. So she reminds him that she only serves Light and threatens to paint the floor with their guts if he disrespects her again. At that moment, Garu realizes that she is way out of his league, but then Light shows up and tells Mei to relax. After he pulls back his cloak, Goru freezes in shock, but quickly regains his boastful attitude and calls Light stupid for thinking a low-level human can get revenge on an overpowered beast like him. As Light quietly listens, Garu continues laughing and tells Light that he should have stayed hidden, but then Light asks why he hasn't even bothered to figure out how he survived that night. After saying that it was obviously some sort of luck, Garu continues ranting and says it doesn't matter because both of them can't survive against an entire pack of beast folk. The next moment, two of his boys charge in and suddenly get their heads sliced off by Mei. Light then tells her to block the exits, and after she steps back, Garu tells the rest of his boys to stop panicking because they obviously used some cheap trick to unleash such an attack. Light then asks why he has never considered the possibility of being the weaker one, and he immediately starts bragging about how beast folk outrank humans with their superior mana levels. When Light still insists that they are the weaklings in this situation, he gets pissed and joins forces with his boys for a combined attack, but Light easily blasts them all away. He then walks over to Garu and asks if he has any other attacks he would like to try. Upon hearing this, Garu pulls himself back up and cusses at Light before deciding to use his trump card. After summoning a level 500 Fenrir, he gives Light a chance to beg for his life, but Light tells him that such a weak Fenrir means nothing, so Garu asks if he lost his mind after spending all this time in the abyss. Light then promises to stay in the same spot so he can unleash his strongest attack. The next moment, Light gets hit with a blast strong enough to incinerate an entire village. But after the dust settles, he brushes off his jacket and asks Garu if that is all. While Garu starts sweating buckets and struggles to believe his eyes, Light summons a level 9000 Fenrir god. Using a simple ice skill, the Fenrir god destroys Garu's monster, causing his boys to start pissing themselves while he asks how Light could summon such a powerful monster. Light then says he could have defeated the Fenrir on his own and finally reveals his current level. But Garu refuses to believe it and says he has to be some sort of imposter because the real Light would have grown after 3 years. Light then shows him the bracelet of youth and explains how he started using it to make sure he never forgets the pain he felt that night. After realizing that he has no chance of winning, Garu drops to his knees and begs for mercy. He also claims that his boys were behind the scheme to jump Mei and says he was only following orders from the Federation that night. When Light asks why the Federation is looking for a maestro and ordered them to unalive him, Garu says he has no idea because he just did what he was paid to. Just then, his boys claim to have answers, but then Mei proceeds to chop them all up into bite-sized chunks. The next moment, Light asks for Goru's opinion on his plan to wage war against the surface war and warns him to tell the truth because Mei's eye of truth will see through any lies. While losing bladder control, Goru agrees that his current level makes him insanely powerful, but also insists that it might not be enough to take on the entire world because they have spent years arming themselves for such situations. After agreeing with him, Light uses a portal to transport Garu to his throne room, where his entire army has just assembled for the war. He then walks to the throne and orders everyone to reveal their stats before asking Garu if he still feels the same way. Upon seeing all the overpowered monsters and maids, Garu's brain starts deteriorating as he struggles to accept the insanity unfolding in front of him. He eventually musters the courage to ask Light if he is some sort of god, and Light responds that his next course of action depends on how the surface world responds when he demands answers. If you enjoyed this video and want to see Light wage war on the surface world, comment part 2 to see what happens next, and don't forget to turn on post notification.